Biomechanics experts could have explained. While other species developed claws or venom, humans perfected the art of endurance. The Marine's body thrummed with adaptations his opponents couldn't see. Sweat glands to regulate heat, rotating shoulders to throw or climb, slow-twitch muscle fibers optimized for stamina over bursts. To the aliens watching, he appeared weak. They didn't understand he was built to outlast them. The champion feinted left, then right. The Marine tracked the movements without reacting. His ancestors had done the same on African savannas, watching lions exhaust themselves with pointless displays. Persistence hunting wasn't just a tactic, it was coded into human DNA. Wait, endure. Let the predator waste its energy. The alien's armored plates rasped as it moved, already burning through its anaerobic reserves. The Marine's nostrils flared slightly. He could smell the sour tang of alien exertion. Anthropologists would later note the parallel. Early humans chased antelope across 30-mile stretches until the animals collapsed from heat stroke. The Marine employed the same principle, letting frustration do more damage than any weapon. His stillness agitated the champion. Its strikes grew wilder, less precise. Each missed swing cost it precious glycogen. Paleontologists have reconstructed the process. Human endurance running predates stone tools. Before spears, before fire, there was the marathon. The ability to follow wounded prey for days without rest. The Marine's resting heart rate sat at 52 beats per minute. The champion's pulsed visibly beneath its chitinous chest plates. Already approaching critical levels, the crowd sensed the shift. Their cheers faltered as the champion's movement slowed. Confusion rippled through the stands. They expected a swift victory, not this eerie stalemate where their greatest warrior seemed to tire before the human even raised a hand. One of the smaller alien species, vaguely simian, started mimicking the Marine's breathing pattern unconsciously. Comparative biology studies confirm it. No other land mammal matches human stamina. Not over distance. Not over time. The Marine's lungs processed oxygen with brutal efficiency. His bare feet adjusted subtly on the arena floor, tendons absorbing each shock. Meanwhile, the champion's respiratory vents hissed with increasing desperation. Liquid dripped from its thoracic joints, the alien equivalent of sweat. Evolutionary psychologists recognize the tipping point. When persistence hunters shift from pursued to pursuer, the Marine saw the exact moment it happened. The champion's steps lost their precision. Its attacks came half a second slower. Still dangerous, but no longer overwhelming. He exhaled through his nose, a hunter's quiet satisfaction. Biomechanical studies illustrate why. Humans maintain 70% of their maximum speed while carrying loads. The Marine's unencumbered body gave him another advantage. He could keep this up for hours. His joints were lubricating automatically, synovial fluid responding to prolonged tension. The champion's exoskeleton, for all its strength, lacked the same adaptability. Microscopic fractures already spread through its leg struts. The arena's acoustics carried every sound. The crowd heard at first a faint creaking from the champion's knee joints, then the wet, labored rasp of its breathing. The Marine remained motionless except for his eyes. They tracked the alien's every twitch with predatory focus. Zoologists would classify his behavior later. Classic pursuit-predation cues, the lowered center of gravity, the slight forward lean. The champion didn't recognize the signs. How could it? Its species had never been hunted before. Military historians often overlook physiology in battle accounts. They shouldn't. The Marine's calf muscles twitched with barely contained potential. His Achilles tendons coiled like springs. Every organ in his body optimized for one purpose, lasting longer than whatever stood against him. The alien's next attack came in slow motion. The Marine saw it telegraph the blow from 3 meters out. His pupils dilated slightly as adrenaline sharpened his focus. No panic, no wasted movement. Just perfect, patient readiness. Paleoanthropologists have a term for this moment: the endurance threshold. The point where the hunter becomes the hunted. The champion stumbled forward, off balance. The Marine didn't smile. He didn't need to. His body had already won the fight. Now it was just a matter of time. Silence spread through the crowd as realization dawned. Their champion wasn't tiring the human out. It was being worn down systematically, inevitably. The Marine cracked his knuckles. A casual gesture, utterly human. The alien's next breath came in ragged gulps. Its visual receptors darted toward the exits. Too late. The Marine took his first step forward. The crowd shivered. They didn't know it yet, But they were witnessing something their histories had never recorded, an endurance predator switching to attack mode. And doping, he was just getting started. The aliens, weapon extended toward the Marine. Ceremonial sidearm with ornate carvings along its plasma core. Tradition demanded it be presented as both threat and test. The crowd hushed, anticipating the human's fear. What they got was a slow, deliberate reach as the Marine took the weapon by the barrel and turned it toward his own chest. "Fire if you want." His voice didn't rise above conversational volume. The words hung in the air like smoke. The alien handler's thoracic plates flared involuntarily, a physiological tell humans wouldn't recognize, but the Marine noted it all the same. This wasn't bravery. It was a trap built from their own customs. Military historians call this move the loaded gift. Hannibal used it at Lake Trasimene, luring Romans into a valley with seemingly abandoned supplies. Afghan tribesmen left pristine Martini Henry rifles for British soldiers, each one rigged to explode when cocked. The Marine knew the play. Accept the offering, then shift the burden of decision back onto the giver. The alien's gripping claws twitched around the weapon's stock. Its ocular sensors flicked toward the observation pods, seeking guidance. The Marine kept the weapon leveled at his own sternum, fingers loose around the emitter housing. His breathing stayed steady. He didn't blink. Psychologists would later analyze the footage. Human stress responses typically involve pupil dilation, increased respiration. The Marine displayed none. His biometrics mirrored those of Special Forces operatives in controlled interrogation scenarios. Physiological baseline intact, despite mortal danger. The aliens had no frame of reference for such discipline. Their hierarchies relied on obvious displays of dominance. This silent defiance short-circuited their assessment protocols. The ceremonial pistol began to tremble. Not from the Marine's hands, from the aliens. Its neural clusters fired conflicting impulses. Protocol dictated punishing insolence. Survival instincts warned against killing a clearly non-standard opponent. The Marine watched the internal conflict play out across its facial ridges. Exactly as intended, Special Operations training manuals describe the first move paradox. Whoever acts first in a standoff reveals their capabilities. The Marine had studied enough alien psychology during intel briefings to guess their next step. Honor-bound warriors rarely shoot unarmed targets. Not when witnesses record everything. 3 seconds passed. 5. The weapon's cooling fins emitted a faint whine as its charge cycled. Still, the Marine waited. His stance remained open, relaxed. No defensive posturing, no attempt to shield vital organs. The message was clear. I don't consider you a threat. Across the arena, spectators began shifting uncomfortably. Their champion's hesitation spoke louder than any boast. The Marine's lips quirked slightly. Not a smile. The barest acknowledgement of a hypothesis confirmed. Ancient duelists understood this principle. The masters never attacked first. They let opponents overextend, revealing weaknesses in their aggression. The Marine had just turned an entire alien culture's ritual against them. Their own traditions prevented firing the shot, and now everyone saw it. The alien's respiratory vents pulsed faster. Heat radiated from its armored joints. Still, the weapon remained silent. The Marine finally moved, not to disarm but to adjust his grip on the barrel, making it easier for the alien to reclaim its property. A calculated insult disguised as courtesy. Military psychologists would classify this as dominance through passivity. By refusing to engage the obvious threat, the Marine exposed its hollowness. The alien's hesitation proved what verbal challenges couldn't. Their power structure relied on unchallenged theater. Faced with someone who genuinely didn't fear consequences, the system faltered. The weapon clattered to the arena floor. The alien hadn't dropped it so much as recoiled, its neural clusters overwhelmed by contradictory impulses. The Marine didn't retrieve the pistol. He stepped over it, boots clicking against polished stone, eyes never leaving the handler's face. The crowd's murmur built to a dull roar. Protocol demanded execution for such insults, yet the handlers stood frozen, their command hierarchy paralyzed by indecision. The Marine had exposed their truth. Rules matter only when both sides agree to obey them. Security feeds later showed the precise moment when 12 different alien species reassessed humanity. Not when the weapon was offered, not when it was refused, but when the Marine turned his back on their entire pantheon of might and walked toward the next challenger without a backward glance. The pistol lay cooling on the stones. No one dared retrieve it. The serpent warrior struck like liquid metal, a blur of iridescent scales and whip-like limbs. The crowd roared, expecting blood. What they got was physics. The Marine didn't block. He turned. A quarter step rotated his torso just enough for the alien's strike to graze his ribs instead of shattering them. His left arm rose not to attack but to guide the serpentine limb past his center of mass. Kinetic energy redirected rather than opposed. Simple mechanics. Deadly application. Close combat instructors call this accepting the attack. The serpent warrior had committed its entire 8-foot frame to that strike, counting on impact to stop its momentum. Instead, it found only air. The Marine's elbow came up as the alien overbalanced. One precise movement, no wind-up, no wasted motion. The bony point connected just behind the serpent's auditory ridge, exactly where human and alien neuroanatomy overlapped. Medical reports later confirmed the damage wasn't from impact alone. The angle had driven the skull inward at 23 degrees, compressing the brainstem. Instant neural shutdown. The serpent warrior collapsed like a cut puppet, limbs splaying across the arena floor before its mind registered the hit. Martial artists would recognize the principles. Wing Chun's centerline theory, Aikido's blending motions. The Marine had distilled centuries of combat wisdom into one economical movement. No flashy kicks, no dramatic spins, just perfect timing and anatomical knowledge. The crowd's cheers died in their throats. This wasn't how the script went. Their champion should have danced around the human, landing teasing blows before the finale, not face-planted in 3 seconds. Banner carriers froze mid-wave. Bettors stared at now worthless chits. Biomechanical analysis shows why it worked. The serpent warrior's strike carried approximately 1/800 newtons of force, enough to cave in human ribs. But redirected, that same energy became its downfall. The Marine hadn't fought the attack. He'd weaponized it. Special forces trainers emphasize this difference. Most creatures fight force with greater force. Humans learned long ago to let the enemy's strength become their weakness. The Marine's stance as the serpent fell told the whole story. Balanced, relaxed, already assessing the next threat. Combat footage analysts would later count frames. From first movement to takedown, 1.3 seconds. The serpent warrior spent longer twitching on the ground than it had spent engaged. The Marine didn't gloat. He didn't even breathe heavily. Just stepped over the fallen alien toward the next challenger. Neurologists confirm the strike's precision. Human elbows deliver concentrated force, roughly 1.5 times more damaging than a fist pound for pound. The Marine had aimed for the one spot where even light impact could scramble neural pathways. Centuries of boxing matches had taught humanity how fragile the head truly was. The arena's acoustics carried the sickening crack perfectly, not the Hollywood bone snap of fiction, but the wet thud of organic systems failing. The serpent warrior's breathing hitched, then stopped. No dramatic death throes, just stillness. Military historians draw parallels. Roman gladiators targeting kneecaps with short swords. Medieval knights using dagger points through visor slits. The Marine's elbow strike belonged to the same tradition. Maximum effect, minimum energy. Training manuals call this economy of violence. The serpent warrior had expected a contest of speed versus strength. Instead, it encountered calculus, every variable weighed, every movement optimized. The Marine fought like an engineer troubleshooting a faulty machine. Silence spread through the observation pods. Commanders leaned forward, ocular implants zooming. Their tactical AIs scrambled for reassessment patterns. No algorithm accounted for a first-round knockout via single elbow strike. Forensic specialists would later marvel at the minimal blood. No crushed bones or gaping wounds. Just one precisely targeted strike leaving almost no external marks. The cleanest kill in arena history looked almost peaceful, if you ignored the brain hemorrhage. The Marine finally spoke as med drones dragged the body away. Next to him, a single word, perfectly audible. Not a challenge. A simple statement of fact. The next champion hesitated before stepping forward. Not from fear, species pride prevented that. But its gait lacked the earlier swagger. The Marine noticed. Of course he did. The serpent warrior had taught 2 lessons. First, human anatomy held surprising advantages. Second, their new opponent was already doubting. Both facts got filed away behind the Marine's impartial stare. The pile of discarded alien weapons grew nearer. His knuckles didn't even scrape them as he passed. The bear-like alien shook the arena floor as it charged, its 400-pound mass supported by trunk-like legs. Armored plates rattled across its shoulders with each thunderous step. The crowd leaned forward, eager to see the human crushed under that weight. The Marine didn't move until the last possible second. Then he stepped forward, directly into the attack. Calculations happened in microseconds. The alien strike pattern depended on opponents fleeing. Its massive claws swept where a retreating enemy's throat would be, but the Marine was already inside that arc, close enough to smell the rancid oil oozing from the creature's joints. His left foot hooked behind the alien's forward knee just as its weight shifted. Archaeologists have found evidence of this technique in Neolithic battle sites. Tripping maneuvers appear in every human martial tradition from Mongolian wrestling to Brazilian capoeira. The Marine executed it with mechanical precision, not pushing against the alien's mass but removing the single point of support it relied on at that moment. Physics did the rest. The alien's own momentum carried it forward as its legs stopped moving. 7 feet of armored warrior toppled like a redwood, its center of gravity describing a perfect arc toward the stone floor. The Marine didn't waste energy on follow-up strikes. He simply stepped clear as 600 pounds of meat and armor crashed down where he'd stood. Biomechanics researchers would later calculate the impact force, roughly equivalent to a motorcycle hitting a wall at 30 miles per hour. The alien's respiratory vents expelled air in a pained whoosh. Its claws scraped grooves in the arena floor trying to regain footing. The Marine watched its struggles without expression. He knew what the crowd was just realizing. Size meant nothing without control. Military historians call this defeating mass with geometry. Medieval knights learned it when pikemen toppled charging war horses. Riot police relearn it every time protesters use bike locks against shields. The Marine's version was stripped to essentials, no flourish, no wasted motion. Just perfect timing and an intimate understanding of leverage. The alien rolled onto its side, plates screeching. Its massive head swung toward the Marine, jaws gaping. That was its mistake. The Marine's boot met its snout in a short, sharp kick, not enough to damage, just sufficient to snap its head back. The whiplash effect rattled its brain inside the thick skull. Neuroscience explains what happened next. The otolith organs in any species' inner ear can only handle so much abrupt movement. The alien's vestibular system overloaded, sending conflicting signals to its limbs. Its attempted rising became a sluggish flop. The Marine watched impassively as it tried and failed to coordinate 4 massive limbs. Close combat instructors emphasize this principle. Once an opponent is down, keep them there. The Marine didn't stomp or gouge. He simply positioned himself where the alien's wild swings couldn't reach, letting it exhaust itself. Each failed attempt to rise drained more energy, left more openings. The crowd's mutters took on a new tone. Not disappointment, unease. Their champion wasn't being outfought. It was being outthought. The Marine's movements were too precise, too economical. He wasn't winning through strength or speed, but through some colder calculus they couldn't comprehend. Physicists would later dissect the takedown frame by frame. The Marine had applied force at 3 critical points: the initial off-balance, the head snap, and finally a slight pressure behind the alien's shoulder when it almost regained its feet. Each intervention cost him minimal energy while forcing the alien to start its recovery process over. The alien finally stopped struggling, its sides heaving. A low whine emanated from its thoracic cavity. Whether frustration or surrender was unclear. The Marine stepped back, giving it space to rise. Not mercy, assessment. He wanted to see how quickly it could recover. Kinesiologists recognize this battlefield calculus. Humans didn't develop overwhelming physical traits, they evolved to analyze weaknesses. The Marine's slight head tilt as the alien clambered up said everything. He'd already cataloged its vulnerabilities, estimated its stamina reserves. When the alien finally stood, its stance was wider, more defensive. Gone was the reckless charging posture. The Marine nodded slightly, acknowledging the lesson learned. Then he shifted his weight forward, just enough to make the alien flinch back. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Nervous laughter. The kind that hides discomfort. Their unstoppable juggernaut had been reduced to hesitation by a foe half its size. The Marine didn't smile. He didn't need to. Security feeds later showed the precise moment when the alien's commanders began whispering. Not about the fight's outcome, but about the implications. If one human could dismantle their shock troops so efficiently, what did that mean for their invasion plans? The Marine wiped his hands on his trousers, leaving no blood, just dust from the arena floor. He glanced at the next gate as it began grinding open. Heat distortion already shimmered above the stone threshold. The fallen bear alien limped back to its handlers. Its head hung low, not from injury but shame. That was the real damage. Not the bumps or bruises, but the cracked foundation of its confidence. The Marine exhaled through his nose. One breath, slow, controlled. His knuckles didn't even ache yet. He watched the new challenger emerge, a lean figure wreathed in thermal mirages, and felt nothing resembling concern. Just the cold focus of a mechanic assessing another machine to disassemble. Across the arena, bets were being hedged. War plans quietly reconsidered. None of the aliens noticed the Marine's fingers twitch, not in fear but anticipation. The crowd saw only what happened next. The Marine saw 10 moves ahead. The Heat Warrior raised its glowing hands. The Marine cracked his neck left, then right. Somewhere behind them, med drones dragged the still-stunned bear alien from the arena. No one paid it any attention anymore. The gate clanked shut. The crowd held its breath. The Marine blinked once, slow, deliberate, and settled into stance. Not a defensive posture. The relaxed readiness of a butcher eyeing his next cut. The heat shimmer above the arena floor wasn't from the sun. It pulsed from the alien's outstretched hands. Thermal waves distorted the air as it advanced, forcing the Marine back toward the wall. Textbook strategy. Great distance control engagement range. The aliens' commanders nodded in their observation pod. This time their weapon couldn't be redirected with elbows or trips. The Marine's boots scuffed against the arena's stone dust. His retreat looked measured, almost performative. When the alien raised its palms to unleash a concentrated blast, the human's hand dipped suddenly, not to cover his face but to scoop loose grit from the floor. The heat beam ignited the air just as the Marine whipped the handful of dust across its path. Physics did the rest. Superheated particles flared into micro-explosions, scattering the beam's energy. The alien staggered as its own weapon backlashed, refracted heat waves boiling the moisture in its respiratory membranes. The Marine didn't press the attack. He just watched, letting the alien choke on its miscalculation. Ancient Saharan tribes used this trick against laser-sighted rifles centuries ago. A thrown handful of sand could scramble targeting systems. The Marine's version was cruder, more effective. Not defense, sabotage. His fingers were already combing through more dust as the alien wheezed, its heat glands spasming from feedback. Military historians recognize the pattern. Humans don't just endure attacks, they reverse engineer them. Medieval archers learned to notch arrows where armor plates gaped. World War II pilots figured out how to ricochet bombs off water. The Marine treated the heat beam like any other weapon system. Find the weak point in its delivery mechanism. The alien's next blast came weaker, hesitant, smart. But hesitation is fatal against someone who's already solved you. The Marine timed his next dust throw to coincide with the beam's ignition phase. Particulates vaporized instantly in the energy stream, creating a pressure wave that slapped back against the alien's emitter nodes. Its scream sounded like steam escaping a ruptured pipe. Field manuals call this return to sender engagement. Don't stop the attack, hijack it. The Marine's nostrils flared as the stink of scorched chitin filled the arena. He wasn't just winning. He was teaching. Every species in the crowd now understood. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't strength or speed. It was the ability to turn any environment into a weapon. The alien's once pristine heat vents now leaked fluid down its torso. Its attacks came sporadically, each one weaker than the last. The Marine stopped retreating. He advanced through the fading thermal waves, his shadow stretching long across the arena floor. No dramatic charge, just inevitable forward motion. Xenobiologists would later study the footage frame by frame. The alien's physiology depended on precise thermal regulation. Overload its cooling systems and its entire body became a liability. The Marine had turned its greatest asset into a slowly boiling prison. Still, it tried one final attack. A desperate wide-angle blast meant to scorch the entire arena. The Marine saw it coming. The slight tremor in its stance, the way its vents clamped shut before firing. His dust throw this time wasn't defensive. He aimed directly for the alien's facial orifices as the heat wave ignited. The effect was instant. Superheated dust particles lodged in its respiratory tracts, cooking from the inside. The alien reeled, claws tearing at its own face. The Marine stepped around its thrashing body, eyes already scanning for the next challenger. 3 down. No weapons drawn. No serious wounds sustained. Tactical analysts would spend months debating that fight. Not the Marine's technique, that was primitive brilliance easily understood. What unsettled them was his decision-making tree. He hadn't countered the heat beam because it was dangerous. He'd done it to prove a point. Every species in that arena now knew humans could weaponize even the air they breathed. The fallen alien's hisses faded to wet gurgles. Med drones dragged it away, leaving a trail of boiled fluids. The Marine wiped his hands on his pants, clearing residual dust. His breathing hadn't even quickened. High above, alien commanders exchanged glances. Their tactical overlays still showed overwhelming physical superiority. Yet their 4th champion lay defeated, not by superior technology, not by some secret biological advantage, by a handful of arena dust and the mind that conceived its use. The next gate groaned open. This time 6 figures emerged, elite guards, their bladed limbs humming with power fields. The Marine exhaled softly through his nose. Finally, something that required hands-on work. He rolled his shoulders once, cracked his neck left, then right. His fingers flexed not in anticipation or fear, but like a machinist testing tools. The first blade wielder lunged. The Marine sidestepped, his hand already rising to meet its wrist. Somewhere in the crowd, an alien betting agent tallied his 16th consecutive marker. The odds had shifted permanently now. What began as curiosity, then concern, was solidifying into dread. The Marine's knuckles left red streaks on the 3rd Blade Warrior's carapace. But that comes later. First, the dance. The first blade sliced deep across the Marine's ribs. Blood sprayed in an arc, splattering against the arena floor. The crowd roared. This was what they'd paid to see. Human fragility confirmed. But the sound died abruptly when, instead of collapsing, the Marine straightened up and licked red off his teeth. Pain receptors fired along his nervous system. Most species' combat efficiency drops 40% after first blood. Humans are different. Studies show controlled pain exposure can sharpen focus, narrowing vision to tactical essentials. The Marine's pupils constricted as endorphins flooded his system. His grin had nothing to do with happiness. Bleeding doesn't stop us. He smeared crimson across his palm, examining the color. It means we're alive. The elite guards hesitated. Their weapons hovered uncertainly. No one had ever addressed them while dripping onto the stones. The Marine rolled his shoulders, letting fresh blood pump from the wound. His stance didn't waver. If anything, it settled into something more solid. Historical accounts confirm this pattern. Wounded samurai fought more fiercely. Shot-down pilots became deadlier in hand-to-hand. Pain becomes information. The Marine's brain was already remapping movement around the injury, adjusting balance points. Blood loss minimal. Psychological impact on opponents observing his indifference, immeasurable. The lead guard lashed out again. This time the Marine didn't dodge. He took the cut across his bicep deliberately, trapping the blade against bone long enough to land 3 precise strikes to the alien's throat nodes. The guard staggered back, leaking blue fluid. Meanwhile, the Marine's wound pumped steady red onto the stones. Neither seemed to bother him. Neurobiology explains what the aliens couldn't comprehend. Human pain thresholds aren't static. They're trainable. Every scar on the Marine's body represented a lesson learned. His nervous system had been conditioned through years of controlled trauma to interpret damage signals without panic. The guard saw a bleeding opponent. The Marine saw biochemical fuel. They came at him in unison then, 5 remaining. Blades flickered through arena air. The Marine didn't retreat. He advanced into the storm, letting shallow cuts accumulate. Each wound bought him data, attack angles, recovery times, breathing patterns. Blood streaked his frame in crimson tributaries. His breathing remained even. Special Forces medics would later analyze the footage. Superficial lacerations covered 23% of his body surface area. Yet his core temperature stayed steady. Heart rate never spiked above 110. The Marine was breathing through the pain, leveraging centuries of evolutionary adaptation that taught humans to hunt while injured. One guard overcommitted. The Marine grabbed its wrist, used the blade to stab another attacker, then headbutted the first. Cartilage crunched. Blood, both red and blue, splattered the combatants. The Marine spat out a broken tooth. His grin never faded. Combat psychologists call this the wounded bear principle. cornered predators become exponentially more dangerous. The Marine wasn't cornered. He'd chosen this state deliberately. Every drop of blood on the stones screamed a silent message. To the crowd, you wanted violence? Here's what real violence looks like. The guards' formation loosened. Their attacks lost synchronization. The Marine pressed forward, letting his blood-slick hands slip past defenses to crush windpipes, dislocate limbs. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose, except he wasn't losing. He was teaching. Neurological studies confirm shared pain responses across species. When one combatant ignores injuries others would find crippling, it triggers primal unease. The remaining guards hesitated before striking. Their weapons wavered. The Marine didn't. He caught a descending blade between his ribs, deliberately. The move pinned the weapon long enough for his elbow to crush the attacker's voice box. As the alien choked, the Marine twisted free, leaving the weapon embedded in his side. Blood sheeted down his leg. His next step didn't falter. The crowd had gone silent. No more cheering. Just the wet sounds of combat and the metallic tang of blood in the air. The Marine wiped his face, smearing red across his cheekbones like war paint. His teeth shone very white against the crimson. 2 guards remained. They circled warily now, no longer attacking. Their carapaces bore scratches. The Marine's body was a roadmap of cuts. Yet he was the one advancing, forcing them to give ground. His blood left footprints on the stone. Emergency medical texts would later cite this as an example of combat override. Most humans would be in shock from such blood loss. The Marine's training had conditioned his vascular system to prioritize essential functions. His hand stayed steady. His vision remained clear. The injuries were real, they just didn't matter yet. The penultimate guard made its mistake, a hesitant thrust at the Marine's already wounded side. Big error. The Marine collapsed around the blade, intentionally trapping it while his thumbs found the alien's eye sockets. One quick twist and the guard went limp. Final opponent. The Marine yanked the latest blade from his ribs. Didn't throw it. Just held it loosely as blood dripped down the hilt. The last guard backed away until its carapace hit the arena wall. The Marine tilted his head. Had enough? Breathing slightly labored now. Voice utterly calm. The guard's weapon clattered to the stones. The sound echoed across the silent Colosseum. 6 elite warriors. 6 broken bodies. The Marine exhaled slowly, surveying his work. His blood pooled around his boots. The wounds would need stitches. Later. Right now, there was still a monarch to dethrone. The Marine stood before the empty throne, his breath slow and steady despite the blood soaking through his fatigues. 6 guards lay scattered across the arena floor behind him. The crowd's silence was thicker than the stench of spilled alien fluids. He tilted his head back to meet the monarch's gaze, high in the royal pod. Is this a kingdom built on fear alone? The words carried easily in the hushed arena. No shouting. Just a simple question delivered with surgical precision. The monarch's facial ridges darkened with chromatic fury. Royal guards bristled along the balconies, weapons humming to life. The Marine didn't react. He just waited. Blood, dripping from his fingertips onto immaculate alien stonework. Calculation in his stillness. History is littered with rulers who fell for simpler taunts. Persian kings tricked into narrow mountain passes. Conquistadors lured into jungle ambushes. The Marine understood the equation. Strip away a sovereign's aura of invincibility, and all that remains is flesh and bone. His eyes never left the monarch's as whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Psychological warfare manuals detail the exact pressure points. Question a ruler's legitimacy publicly, and they have no choice but to respond. The monarch's talons tapped against his throne's armrests, once, twice before curling into fists. A collective inhale swept through the audience. No one spoke to the High Sovereign this way. Until now. The throne scraped backward as the monarch rose. Robes slithered to the floor, revealing battle armor polished to a mirror shine. The Marine's mouth twitched. No smile. Just recognition of provocation successfully delivered. Command staff reached to restrain their ruler. The Marine saw the hesitation in their movements. uncertainty they'd never shown before today. He stood his ground as the Monarch descended royal steps toward the arena floor. No rush, no panic. The only movement was blood tracing new paths down his forearm. Wargame theorists would later dissect the moment. By dragging the Monarch into personal combat, the Marine reduced an interstellar empire to single combat terms. Human terms. His battered body didn't matter. Neither did the fresh weapons clicking into place around the arena's edge. Only the math of two opponents now. The Monarch's armor whined with suppressed energy as he crossed the killing floor. 7 feet tall without the crown, bio-enhanced musculature visible beneath armored plates. The Marine rolled his neck left, then right, preparing, not for survival, for demonstration. You will learn respect, worm. The Monarch's voice boomed through unseen amplifiers. The Marine blinked, once slow as if listening to distant thunder. Humanity's history is written in these moments. Davids baiting Goliaths. Spartans picking their ground at Thermopylae. The Marine planted his feet slightly apart, not a defensive stance. An invitation. The crowd leaned forward as one. This wasn't execution anymore, not sport. Something more primal crackled in the air between the two figures. The Monarch's first strike would be telling. Military psychologists track decision points in combat. The Marine clocked them all. The Monarch's slight shoulder twitch before moving. The shifting weight distribution signaling attack vector. Predator's telegraph. Prey learns to read. The strike came like comet impact, a descending hammer fist that would pulp human bone. The Marine didn't block. He pivoted just enough that the gauntlet grazed his cheek, drawing a fresh line of crimson. Close enough to smell the ionized metal. Far enough to survive the lesson. First rule of human warfare. Let your enemy underestimate you once. The Marine's return strike wasn't aimed at the Monarch's imposing chest plate. His fist snapped upward precisely as the alien overbalanced, connecting with the nerve cluster beneath the jaw where armor couldn't cover. The Monarch staggered. Not far, not long. But the sight froze every alien present, their invincible ruler, retreating, from a wounded, bleeding human. The Marine didn't press the advantage. He stepped back, breathed, let the moment stretch as the Monarch regained footing. The crowd's murmurs built to a dull roar, then died abruptly as the Monarch's crown slipped slightly askew. Symbols matter more than steel in the end. The Marine watched understanding dawn in the Monarch's eyes. This wasn't about defeating a human insurgent anymore. It was about surviving in front of subjects who'd never seen their ruler falter. The Monarch attacked again. Faster this time, sloppier, exactly as predicted. The Marine exhaled through his nose. The real fight could finally begin. The Monarch's first strike came like a collapsing star, all contained fury and impossible weight. Armored knuckles tore air where the Marine's head had been a microsecond before. The crowd roared, anticipating the splatter of human remains across the arena stones. They got something else entirely. The Marine absorbed the glancing impact across his shoulder, letting it spin him just enough to analyze the king's follow-through. Royal combat training was beautiful to watch, perfectly balanced, every movement polished through centuries of ritual duels. Also entirely predictable. The Marine's ribs ached where the blow landed, his skin already purpling. His breathing didn't change. Second strike came high, a sweeping backhand meant to decapitate. The Marine ducked under it, close enough to smell the ionized metal of the Monarch's gauntlets. He didn't counterattack, not yet. His eyes tracked the king's weight distribution, the slight hitch in his breathing pattern between combinations. Data points accumulating. Combat theorists would later debate the Marine's restraint. Why take hits he could avoid? The answer lived in human history. Knights testing opponents in tournament melees, boxers studying rivals in early rounds. The Marine wasn't fighting a battle. He was conducting an autopsy on the Monarch's fighting style while it still moved. The king's third attack came as a knee toward the Marine's gut. Textbook perfect. Also telegraphed half a second in advance by the tightening of his thigh plates. The Marine rolled with the impact, letting it push him back rather than penetrate. Blood flecked his lips from internal bruising. His pupils stayed focused, alert. Martial artists call this phase eating the storm. The Monarch had trained for elegant, honor-bound duels against opponents who followed the same rules. The Marine had learned in back-alley brawls and urban war zones. He kept his elbows tucked, his chin down, weathering the onslaught like a man standing in surf, letting each wave exhaust itself against his presence. 5 strikes. 10. The Monarch's armored fists became blurs. The Marine took most on his forearms or shoulders, deflecting rather than blocking. His forearms would be masses of broken blood vessels tomorrow. Right now they were living shields, tough from years of combat conditioning. Where strikes landed, they left bruises, not broken bones. The crowd's cheers began to falter. Their Monarch wasn't just failing to kill the human, he was being measured. The Marine's eyes never stopped moving, tracking patterns invisible to anyone without his background. Military combatives trained soldiers to identify what he was seeing. The tiny recovery pause after each royal combination, the way the king always reset to center guard before attacking again. Telltale habits. Exploitable ones. By the 15th exchange, the Marine started nodding slightly between strikes. Not taunting, cataloging. The king's respirator hissed louder now. His strikes came a hair slower, a fraction less precise. Perfect conditioning couldn't erase the psychological toll of an opponent who wouldn't fall or flee. Then came the tell. The Monarch's left hook, always his strongest attack, started dipping slightly before launch. Fatigue or frustration, it didn't matter. The Marine saw it, noted it, filed it away. A weakness to exploit later. For now, he kept rolling with punches, stepping inside strikes to smother their power. His boots scraped circles in the bloody arena dust. Neurologists explain what happened next. The human brain excels at pattern recognition under fire. While the Monarch relied on rehearsed combinations, the Marine's neural pathways adapted in real time. Each absorbed blow refined his internal model of royal combat rhythm. By the 20th exchange, he was already predicting strikes before they launched. The king's armored boot suddenly came up in a surprise front kick, a desperation move. The Marine caught it against his hip rather than his center mass, letting the energy spin him away rather than take the full force. He hit the ground in a controlled roll, coming up with blood dripping from his nose. His first real injury. His expression never changed. Special Forces veterans would recognize the calculation happening behind his eyes. The Monarch had just broken pattern, showed something new. That was valuable intel. The Marine exhaled sharply, clearing blood from his nasal passages. His next breath came slow and controlled. Oxygen management, pain compartmentalization, basic skills for any grunt. The Monarch paused, chest heaving beneath ornate armor. His visual receptors narrowed at the Marine's steady stance. This wasn't how duels ended in royal courts. Opponents didn't keep standing after taking direct hits from the throne's fist. The alien's hesitation lasted exactly 1.3 seconds, long enough for the Marine to finish his assessment. He spat crimson onto the stones between them, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. When he raised his guard again, something had changed in his posture. No more yielding movements, no more accepting punishment. The studying phase was over. Now came the teaching. The Marine shifted his weight left, shoulders dipping slightly. The perfect feint. The Monarch took the bait, armored plate shifting to block a strike that never came. At the last millisecond, the Marine pivoted right, his boot lashing out in a short, brutal arc. It connected just below the king's kneecap with a wet crunch. Biology doesn't care about crowns or titles. The human knee is a masterpiece of fragile engineering. Tendons, ligaments, and cartilage balanced in delicate equilibrium. The Marine's strike disrupted all of it. The Monarch's leg folded inward at a sickening angle, joint giving way like rotten timber. His armored bulk crashed down, one gauntleted hand slapping the arena floor to catch himself. Combat medics call this a fight ender. No amount of alien physiology changes basic biomechanics. The Marine didn't celebrate. He circled left, keeping pressure on the damaged limb. His breathing was steady, eyes tracking every twitch. This wasn't personal, just physiology meeting physics. The Monarch roared, trying to rise. His knee buckled immediately, spraying viscous blue fluid across the stones. The Marine stepped inside his guard, delivering 2 sharp elbow strikes to the same joint, reinforcing the lesson. Surgeons would later confirm the damage. Patella dislocated, anterior cruciate ligament torn, tibia fractured clean through. All from 3 precisely placed impacts. Special Forces manuals dedicate whole chapters to joint targeting. Knees, elbows, shoulders, the weak points in any armor. The Marine executed the textbook move without hesitation. His expression never changed. No anger, no triumph, just a tradesman checking his work. The crowd's silence was absolute. Their god-king knelt before a battered human, one leg bent at an impossible angle. The Marine didn't gloat. He wiped blood from his nose with the back of his hand and waited. The message was clearer than any taunt. Your strength means nothing if you can't stand. Historical parallels are unavoidable. David didn't beat Goliath with brute force, he found the weak spot. The Marine's boot had just rewritten interstellar politics the same way. Now the Monarch panted on all fours, his crown hanging askew. Every species in the arena saw it, felt it. Joint manipulation has won human battles for millennia. Medieval knights targeted armor gaps with daggers. Brazilian jiu-jitsu pioneers proved size loses to leverage every time. The Marine was just the latest practitioner of an ancient science. His boot pressed lightly against the Monarch's ruined knee, not enough to cause more damage. Just enough to remind pain receptors fire the same in any nervous system. The Monarch's breath came in ragged gulps. His visual receptors dilated with shock. Pride kept him from screaming, but his body trembled uncontrollably. The Marine studied him like an engineer examining faulty machinery. No malice. Just assessment kinesiology explains why the king couldn't rise. Human knees support 8 times our body weight when walking. The Marine's strikes had turned the Monarch's greatest asset into dead weight. His attempts to stand only ground bone shards together, sending fresh agony through his system. The Marine knelt, bringing them eye to eye. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. His gaze said everything. You thought this was a match of strength. It was always a test of understanding. Around them, royal guards hesitated, weapons half raised. None dared intervene. Military historians call this the psychological fulcrum, the exact moment when perceived invincibility shatters. The Monarch's fingers dug grooves in the arena floor. His body still radiated power, still outweighed the Marine by 200 pounds of augmented muscle. None of it mattered now. The Marine stood smoothly, avoiding the king's grasping claws. He stepped back, giving the Monarch space to fail again, to prove to every watching alien what happens when you mistake ceremony for combat. The king's next attempt to rise ended with a muffled groan and another collapse. Neurobiology confirms what happened next. Pain-induced endorphins flooded the Monarch's system, dulling his reflexes. Shock set in, pupils dilating further. The Marine saw it all, adjusting his stance minimally, ready but not threatening. The perfect demonstration of controlled dominance. Security feeds showed the precise moment realization spread through the crowd. Their invincible ruler wasn't just losing, he'd been systematically dismantled. The Marine's knuckles were raw, his body streaked with blood, but his spine stayed straight, his breathing even. He hadn't just defeated their champion. He'd exposed their entire power structure as theater. The Monarch finally stilled, crouched on his good knee. The arena's acoustics carried his labored breathing to every corner. The Marine exhaled slowly through his nose. Not quite a sigh. More like a scientist concluding an experiment. He turned slightly, not toward the exits or the crowd, but to the observation pods where the high command watched. Their reflected faces showed identical expressions, a mix of awe and dawning horror. The Marine knew what they were realizing. If one human could do this, what about the rest? Blood dripped from his elbow onto the Monarch's discarded crown. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The Marine didn't smile, didn't speak. He just waited, letting the moment stretch, letting every species in attendance fully comprehend the new reality. The knee had given way first. Now the galaxy would follow. The Marine stepped over the Monarch's shattered knee, his boot leaving a faint smear of blood on the royal armor. He didn't look down at the gasping ruler. His gaze lifted past the fallen king, past the stunned crowd, to the observation pods where alien commanders hunched over flickering tactical displays. Silence spread like a virus through the Colosseum. Then he spoke. 3 words, delivered without rancor or triumph. This was bait. The arena's acoustics carried it perfectly. No echo, no distortion. Just the simple truth hanging in the air like smoke. The Monarch's labored breathing hitched as realization dawned. Too late. Humanity had used this playbook for millennia. Sun Tzu's feigned retreats at the Battle of Boju, Allied deception campaigns before D-Day. Entire wars hinged on letting your enemy believe they'd struck first. The Marine's nostrils flared slightly. catching the acrid scent of the Monarch's distress pheromones. His expression remained neutral, just a soldier reporting facts. Strategic studies call this the demonstration strike, not an assault on infrastructure or armies, an attack on perception. The Marine's ribs ached where the Monarch's blows had landed. His split lip stung. Every injury carefully measured. Each drop of blood a calculated investment in galactic calculus. The commanders in their observation pods leaned forward, ocular implants whirring as they reassessed. Tactical hollows flickered with revised projections. None showed this outcome. The Marine watched their confusion without comment. Let them piece it together. History's most effective demonstrations share three traits: controlled escalation, visible sacrifice, and an audience primed for terror. The Marine had provided all three. He'd let them strike first, endured their champion's arrogance, absorbed their best blows without collapsing. Now came the revelation that every moment had been orchestrated. The Monarch twitched at his feet, still struggling to process. His vocal grill spat static. "You planned this?" The words came wet with pain fluids. The Marine didn't answer directly. He turned in a slow circle, making sure every species in the crowd saw his battered face. Let them count the wounds, measure the blood. Then he raised his voice just enough to carry to the cheapest seats. "Earth never came here begging for peace." A pause, exactly 1.8 seconds. "We came to see who'd take the first swing." Another pause. The Monarch's clawed hand scrabbled weakly against the arena floor. "And you just did." Primate social dominance studies explain what happened next. When alpha males fall, the troop either revolts or fractures. The alien commanders' postures shifted subtly, some backing toward exits, others squaring up to rivals. The Marine noted each reaction without seeming to. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers slightly curled, ready but not threatening. The perfect messenger's stance. Psychological warfare relies on delayed detonation. The Marine's words would ripple outward long after this fight ended. Every vassal species present now knew two things: their overlord could be toppled, and humans didn't fight fair. That knowledge would spread like brushfire across the galaxy. The Marine's job was simply to light the spark. The Monarch finally understood. His ocular implants dilated, then contracted. His breathing apparatus hitched as neural suppressants flooded his system. Too little, too late. The Marine crouched beside him, close enough to whisper, "They'll remember today." Not a threat. An observation. Not how you fell. A glance toward the observation pods. But who watched? Tremors ran through the crowd. The Marine stood and walked toward the arena's exit gate. No guards moved to stop him. None even raised their weapons. Political scientists would later call this the broken mirror effect. Once subjects see their ruler's weakness reflected in others' eyes, authority crumbles irreparably. The Marine's footsteps echoed off the blood-slick stones. He didn't look back. The demonstration was complete. Every wound, every counterstrike, every drop of blood spent precisely as intended. The Monarch would live, another calculated choice. Dead rulers inspire martyrs, crippled ones inspire revolts. At the gate, the Marine finally turned. The crowd remained frozen, caught between terror and revelation. He met no one's gaze directly, just tilted his head slightly as if listening to distant thunder. Then the gate clanked shut behind him, cutting off the view. Silence held for 3 heartbeats. Then the shouting started, not at the Marine, at each other. Exactly as predicted, wars aren't won in battles. They're won in the moments after, when the losing side realizes how thoroughly they've been outplayed. The Marine walked down the access tunnel, his boots leaving faint red prints on the polished floor. Behind him, the first sounds of collapsing authority echoed like falling dominoes. He didn't smile, didn't speed up, just kept moving one measured step at a time. The real work was just beginning. The Monarch lay sprawled like shattered statuary at the Marine's boots, his ruined knee leaking blue ichor across the arena stones. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the final snap of spine or slash across the throat. The kill never came. The Marine stepped back, just enough to make the intention clear. His hands hung loose at his sides, fingers slightly curled but empty. Not mercy, demonstration. Every scarred veteran in history knows the truth. Controlled restraint terrifies more than any frenzy. Silence spread through the Colosseum like spilled coolant. Royal guards hesitated at the edges, weapons half raised. None moved to intercept. The Marine didn't glance their way. His focus remained on the panting Monarch, watching as realization seeped through the pain. This wasn't defeat. It was demolition. 16 feet away, the royal throne stood empty for the first time in living memory. Its obsidian surfaces caught the arena lights, throwing back twisted reflections of the scene. The Marine ignored it. He didn't need to sit there to prove his point. The Monarch's broken body made the argument better than any symbolic gesture. Political theorists would later call this the void principle. Power isn't about occupancy, it's about the capacity to leave spaces empty. The Marine wiped blood from his eyebrow with his thumb, examining the smear dispassionately. His other injuries would need attention soon. That could wait. The Monarch's voice crackled through damaged vocal grills. Finish it. A demand, not a plea. The Marine exhaled through his nose. Not quite a laugh. More like a mechanic hearing a faulty engine sputter. He crouched, bringing them eye to eye, close enough to smell the alien sour fear breath beneath the royal pheromones. Dead kings make martyrs. He spoke quietly, just for them. Crippled ones make lessons. Battlefield psychology confirms the strategy. Wounded leaders fracture factions. The Monarch's remaining leg twitched, armor plates squealing as he tried unsuccessfully to rise. The Marine didn't help, didn't hinder, just watched the struggle like a scientist observing lab results. Across the arena, alien commanders exchanged coded glances. Their tactical networks buzzed with reassessment protocols. None had contingency plans for this scenario. The entire invasion doctrine had assumed binary outcomes, conquest or annihilation. The Marines' third option short-circuited their logic trees. Med drones hovered at the periphery, Bugan approaching without royal summons. The Marine noted their hesitation. Another data point. He straightened slowly, working the stiffness from his bruised knuckles. The crowd's murmur built to a nervous hum. History's greatest conquerors understood this moment. Genghis Khan spared skilled artisans. Roman legions granted honorable surrender terms. The lesson always landed the same. Controlled victory lasts longer than slaughter. The Marine's lips quirked at one corner. Not a smile. The barest acknowledgement of proven theory. The Monarch finally stilled, propped on one elbow. His crown had tumbled into the blood sand, its guidance systems dark. The Marine towed it gently, sending it skittering toward the royal guard line. None reached to catch it. Symbolic voids have weight. The empty throne. The discarded crown. The Marine's untouched holster. Each absence spoke louder than any battle cry could. His boots crunched on broken arena tiles as he turned toward the exit tunnel. No theatrics. No final taunts. Just a bloodied man walking away from a job completed. Behind him, the Monarch's choked orders went unheeded. Royal physicians dithered at the arena's edge, uncertain of protocol. Guards stared at their weapons as if suddenly questioning their purpose. The Marine's shadow stretched long across the killing floor, intersecting perfectly with the vacant throne's silhouette. The alien warrior towers over the Marine, his slap echoing across the arena. The crowd roars, expecting submission, but the Marine just tilts his head and smirks. Was that supposed to hurt? Or are you just trying to hold my hand in public? The silence is deafening. This isn't how it's supposed to go. And that's when the galaxy learns its first lesson. Humanity doesn't fight like the rest. Watch what happens when one man turns humiliation into a strategic advantage. The slap cracked like a whip across the arena. To the gathered aliens, it was more than mere punishment. It was their entire philosophy of power made flesh. Dominance established through public humiliation. Control maintained by fear. Yet the Marine didn't stagger, didn't flinch. He just stood there, one man against thousands, with blood trickling from his split lip and something worse than anger in his eyes. Confrontation psychology shows the first move reveals everything. The attacker expects either submission or escalating rage. Neither comes. The Marine wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, studying the alien's body language like a technician diagnosing faulty machinery. That's when the smirk appears. Not nervous energy, not bravado. Cold calculus. The titanic warrior hesitates for the first time in its existence. Its cranial ridges twitch as primitive logic circuits overload. Every alien in the amphitheater leans forward, their collective breath held. They've seen this ritual 1,000 times, outsiders broken beneath their champion's hands. But this? A prey species grinning at its predator? Their certainty fractures like thin ice. Military psychologists would later note the precision of that moment. Human warriors trained to exploit hesitation, that microsecond when an opponent recalibrates. The Marine doesn't waste his. He steps closer, invading the alien's personal space, forcing it to either retreat or escalate. His voice carries perfectly in the sudden quiet. You hit like my grandmother. And she's been dead for 12 years. Laughter erupts, not from human throats but from a dozen different alien species in the crowd. The sound is jagged, uncertain. Some laugh from genuine amusement, others from nervous tension. None understand they're witnessing a strategy older than gunpowder. Special operations veterans will tell you, the true battle happens before weapons are drawn. The Marines' ancestors knew it when they faced down charging elephants with nothing but disciplined formations. His grandfathers proved it staring across barbed wire at enemies with superior firepower. Now standing alone in an alien coliseum, he weaponizes the same principle. The champion's next blow never comes. Its massive hand twitches, then stills. A murmur sweeps through the assembled warriors. Their eyes flick between the seemingly unarmed human and their frozen champion. The Marine's boots haven't shifted an inch. His breathing remains steady. But something fundamental has changed in the arena's atmosphere. Interrogation manuals describe this shift precisely. When the subject begins questioning their own assumptions, control has already transferred. The Marine watches realization dawn in the alien's yellow eyes. All that bulk, all that technological superiority, and their entire hierarchy trembles because one man refused to play by their rules. Evolutionary biologists would later pinpoint this as humanity's hidden advantage. While other species developed thicker hides or sharper claws, humans perfected the art of turning weakness into strength. A smile becomes a weapon. Patience transforms into aggression. Now the entire arena sees it firsthand as their champion takes an involuntary step back. The Marine doesn't press the advantage. He doesn't need to. Let them marinate in that moment, their unstoppable warrior retreating from a lone human. Let them whisper about it in their barracks and strategy sessions. The psychological groundwork is laid. He spits blood onto the polished arena floor, the red stark against silver alien metal. Then he does the one thing their simulations never predicted. He turns his back on their champion, casually scanning the crowd like a professor surveying a dull classroom. Every eye tracks him. Every weapon hand twitches, but the real damage is already done. The myth of alien invincibility lies shattered across the Colosseum floor. And the Marine? He's just getting started. The Marine's smirk wasn't an accident. It wasn't nerves. Every twitch of his facial muscles was deliberate. A weapons system fine-tuned through centuries of human conflict. Across the galaxy, other species relied on pheromones or bioluminescence to signal intent. Humans had something far more dangerous. Expressions that could lie. The champion alien froze, its massive frame locked in hesitation. Its neural clusters processed the expression through 7 different combat subroutines and found no match. Predators show teeth as threats. Prey animals bear them in submission. The Marine's expression fit neither category. To the hive-mind conditioned aliens, this was more unsettling than any battle stance. Tactical psychology studies show that unpredictability forces hesitation. Ancient kings learned this when peasants laughed during executions. Generals saw it when enemy troops cracked jokes across barbed wire. The Marines had institutionalized it, smiling at killing ranges to make enemies doubt their own eyes. Today the lesson echoed through an alien coliseum. Something wrong? The Marine's voice carried just enough amusement to sting. His smirk widened incrementally, calibrated to needle rather than provoke. The alien champion's armored hand flexed, not in aggression but frustration. Its commanders shifted in their observation pod, claws tapping uneasily against consoles. They'd accounted for human weapons, human tactics. Nobody had warned them about human sarcasm. Anthropologists would later compare the moment to chess players facing a new piece. The rules hadn't changed, but the implications rippled outward. Across the arena, translator devices hissed static as they attempted to parse the Marine's tone. Some species interpreted it as madness. Others registered fatalistic bravery. The truth was worse, it was neither. Special Forces training manuals dedicate entire chapters to psychological dominance. A guard tower isn't defeated by bullets alone. First, you make its occupants question their safety. The Marine's expression accomplished the same. His smirk didn't just mock their champion, it eroded the certainty of every spectator. A ripple passed through the alien ranks. Shoulder plates clattered as warriors glanced at one another. They'd seen humans die screaming in other arenas. They'd watched them break under torture. This was different. The Marines' amusement wasn't bravado. It was the calm of a man already 3 moves ahead. Cultural attachés would eventually identify the smirk's lineage. It echoed from Roman gladiator sands to POW camps. In human history, the unbroken stare and half-smile toppled more regimes than siege engines. Now, light years from Earth, the pattern repeated itself. The champion took another step back, its armored feet scraping against the arena floor. Combat psychologists recognized the turning point, the moment when perception shifts from hunter to hunted. The Marine didn't advance. He didn't need to. His body language had already redrawn the battlefield's psychological contours. The alien's next attack, when it came, would be tentative, predictable. Neuroscientists would later dissect the moment. Human facial expressions trigger primal recognition circuits, even in species with no common evolutionary lineage. The aliens didn't understand smiles, but their nervous systems registered the Marines' confidence on some ancient, instinctive level. Their collective unease grew as the silence stretched. The Marine exhaled through his nose, a quiet chuckle that carried further than any shout. His eyes never left the champion's visual receptors. There was no mockery in his gaze, only assessment. That was the cruelest part. He wasn't taunting an opponent. He was studying a tactical problem. Training manuals call this violence inoculation. After enough combat, fear rewires into focus. The Marine's smirk wasn't masking terror. It signaled its absence. Every twitch of alien limbs, every shift in stance registered with clinical detachment. The champion could crush his skull with one blow. Both of them knew it wouldn't get the chance. Military historians would pinpoint this as the engagement's true turning point. Not the first strike, not the final blow. The instant when the alien warrior's certainty faltered. The Marine saw it happen. His smirk didn't waver. If anything, it sharpened. The crowd's murmur built to a dull roar. Their champion still stood armed and armored. The human remained unarmed, bleeding slightly from the earlier strike. Yet somehow, impossibly, the power dynamic had inverted. The Marine's expression never changed. That was the most terrifying part. Then, with perfect timing, he blinked. Just once. Slow. Deliberate. The kind of blink cats give cornered mice. Across 24 species, the gesture translated perfectly. The champion's weapon hand trembled. First blood to the Marine. And he hadn't even thrown a punch. The Marine didn't tense when the alien champion circled him. He didn't mirror its aggression. His breathing stayed slow, his feet planted wide. To the aliens, it looked like passivity. They didn't recognize the stance for what it was, a patience waiting crouch honed over 2 million years of human evolution. Military strategists measure victory in ground taken or enemies eliminated. The Marines' metrics were simpler. He'd entered to test a hypothesis that their empire was a hollow system waiting for the right pressure point. The slumped Monarch and silent crowd confirmed it. Rustling fabric sounded unexpectedly loud as alien nobles began edging toward exits. Vassal species muttered in their native tongues. The Marine didn't glance back. His shoulders rolled with each step, working out combat stiffness. The wounds would heal. The message wouldn't fade. At the tunnel mouth, he paused just long enough to let the scene settle behind him. The throne remained empty. The crown lay tarnished in the dirt. And the galaxy's most feared warlord wheezed helplessly on his side, watching his own empire start to dissolve in real time. The Marine exhaled once, shook out his hands, and walked into the dimness beyond. The sound of his fading footsteps carried further than any victory speech. Rebellions aren't sparked by killing kings. They ignite when subjects see the crown can fall. The Marine had done his part. Now galactic revolution would handle the rest. Somewhere behind him, the first shouts of protest began, exactly on schedule. The Marine turned at the arena's exit ramp, his silhouette framed against the harsh glow of emergency lights. Blood streaked his face, his clothes torn from the battle. The crowd's silence pulsed like an open wound. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. One man. His voice carried across the arena, quiet but precise. That's all it took. A murmur rippled through the gathered aliens. Translators hissed as they scrambled to parse the implications. The Marine exhaled once, a slow, controlled breath. Then he delivered the final words like a blade sliding between ribs. "Imagine the rest of us." 5 words. Nothing more. He didn't wait for reaction. Didn't linger for dramatic effect. Just turned and walked into the shadows beyond the archway. Behind him, the silence cracked open like thin ice underfoot. Underdog stories rely on disproving assumptions. The aliens had expected broken obedience or desperate resistance. The Marine had shown them neither. Combat psychologists confirm this moment. When perceived weakness flips to perceived threat, is the most disruptive force in any conflict. The arena's acoustics carried the growing panic perfectly. Command pods erupted with overlapping transmissions. Vassal species edged toward exits, their ocular implants flickering with recalculations. The Monarch's broken body still twitched near the throne. But no one paid him attention anymore. Their eyes tracked the empty space where the Marine had stood just seconds before. History repeats this pattern. Thermopylae 300 making Persia question its infinite manpower. The Viet Cong convincing a superpower to withdraw. The Marine knew the math. He'd just demonstrated humanity's true strategic advantage. Not individual strength, but the terrifying idea that every human might fight like this. Tactical analysts would later dissect those 5 words. Their power lay in what wasn't said. No boasts, no threats. Just a quiet invitation to extrapolate. Guards who'd hesitated to fire now reassessed their sidearms' utility. Armor specialists wondered if their designs accounted for human joint strikes. The questions spread faster than any virus. The Marine's footsteps echoed down the access tunnel. He didn't hurry. His breathing remained steady despite broken ribs. Each drop of blood left behind was evidence, not of his limits, but of what he'd endured to deliver that message. Abandoned betting slips swirled across the arena floor. Alien nobles clutched communication devices, whispering to off-world contacts. The implications were already metastasizing far beyond this system. Military strategists call this asymmetric signaling. The Marine hadn't just won a fight. He'd reframed the entire conflict. 16 different vassal species now had footage of their invincible overlords humbled by a single opponent. That footage would leak. It always did. The observation deck's armored glass reflected shifting stances. Former allies exchanged guarded looks. Trade delegates recalculated allegiances. None of them voiced the thought aloud, but it vibrated beneath every hushed conversation. If one baseline human could do this, what about the billions left on Earth? Neuropsychology confirms the potency of such implicit threats. The unknown always terrifies more than the known. The Marine had carefully avoided specifying whether others could match his performance. Better to let their imaginations run wild. Security feeds caught the exact moment when the first mercenary company canceled its contract. When 3 border patrol fleets went to sudden high alert, the dominoes fell silently at first, barely noticeable amid the arena's chaos. Meanwhile, the Marine reached the holding area, where they'd stored his gear. He didn't look at the stunned attendants as he collected his sidearm. The weapon's weight was familiar in his hand. Still fully loaded. He hadn't needed it. Back in the arena, the first open challenges began. A reptilian emissary publicly refused a royal order. 2 guard factions squared off near the wounded monarch. The fractures spread like cracks in ceramic, small at first, then branching exponentially. The Marine walked past unmanned checkpoints. No one stopped him. No one dared. His gait was casual, unhurried. He knew how this played out. Humans had been overthrowing bullies since the first stone fortresses fell. As he stepped into the docking bay's harsh light, 6 alien species were already recalling their invasion fleets. Another 3 were drafting neutrality pacts. The Marine didn't smile. Didn't need to. The real work would happen light years away in the hushed corridors of alien power. Every warlord who'd laughed at humanity's primitive armies would now lie awake, wondering. He boarded his ship, sealed the hatch, and exhaled for the first time since entering the arena. The autodock would have plenty to fix later. Starter motors whined as the engines came online. The Marine wiped blood from his eyelids and entered the coordinates for home. Behind him, across 1,000 worlds, the myth of alien supremacy had already begun to unravel. The Marine's boots left dark prints on the docking bay floor, blood and arena dust mixing into rust-colored streaks. Behind him, the Colosseum's noise had shifted from shock to something more volatile. He didn't look back. True wars rarely start with declarations. The first Roman invasion of Britain began with a single trading ship seized. World War I ignited from one pistol shot in Sarajevo. Today's conflict sparked when an alien struck a human and got a smirk instead of screams. The shuttle hatch sealed behind him with a hiss. Medical scanners immediately painted his injuries in harsh red lighting. Fractured ribs, torn ligaments, 3 separate sources of internal bleeding. He ignored the warnings. His hands moved across the console with deliberate slowness, inputting coordinates not for any military base, but for an unmarked transit lane near Jupiter. Meanwhile, light years away, alien ambassadors were already backpedaling. Communication channels lit up with frantic reassurances and abruptly canceled troop deployments. The Marine's ship computer pinged with 17 encrypted alerts in the first 90 seconds. He deleted them unread. Human warfare psychology operates on delayed triggers. Plant the seed today, harvest the panic months later. The Marine knew fresh footage was already spreading through alien networks. Their monarch crippled, their champions humiliated, their entire power structure gutted without a single fleet engagement. Impact studies conducted after conflicts show that paradigm shifts hit hardest when victims don't realize they're participating. The arena's security feeds had captured every micro-expression. The guards hesitating, the nobles exchanging glances, the way betting slips fluttered to the ground unused. The Marine had seen it all with peripheral vision honed by urban combat. Pre-conflict indicators were flashing across the galaxy now. On Zeta-3 mining colonies, labor overseers reported sudden work stoppages. Tau Ceti mercenary bands canceled contracts without explanation. The signs were subtle but universal. The quiet before insurrections. The ship's autodock jabbed a needle into the Marine's forearm without comment. Endorphin suppressants to keep him sharp through the coming hours. The blood loss should have left him woozy, but Special Forces conditioning allowed for temporary override of biological limits. He blinked once hard to clear swimming vision. Strategic forecasts played across his tactical display. Probability cones fanned outward from today's events. 37% chance of immediate coup attempts. 68% likelihood of at least 3 vassal systems declaring independence within 6 standard months. The numbers didn't matter. Only the trend line did, sharply upward. Back at the arena, cleanup crews were still power-washing blue alien blood from the stones. No one had touched the Monarch yet, protocols frozen by indecision. This single image, broadcast across 100 worlds, did more damage than any orbital bombardment. Humanity had planted its flag in the worst possible place for their enemies, right in the collective subconscious. The Marine knew the coming months would see exaggerated rumors spreading like plasma fires. How many more humans could fight like this? What other weaknesses had their analysts missed? His console lit up with an incoming priority message. Earth Strategic Command finally catching up. The Marine marked it for later review. Right now there was just one piece of data worth monitoring: the steady uptick in defections from alien naval forces. Combat psychologists confirm that most soldiers can stomach being outgunned, but not outthought. The Marine's demonstration had introduced something far more dangerous than human strength: human unpredictability. His wounds would heal. Their tactical certainty wouldn't. The ship's engines cycled up with a whine that vibrated through cracked ribs. The Marine exhaled slowly through his nose. Watching the Colosseum shrink on the aft display, its light still blazed against the planet's dusk line. From this distance, it almost looked peaceful. Rebellions aren't televised. They're whispered in barracks and echoed through merchant guild channels. The Marines' comms suddenly flooded with coded bursts from 17 different resistance cells. All same message, different wording. You showed us how. Now watch what happens next. He allowed himself one dry chuckle before engaging the warp drive. History remembers the first shot fired, rarely the moment the enemy realizes they've already lost. The star field stretched into luminous streaks. Behind him, across 300 worlds, the myth of invincibility was crumbling. The Marine leaned back in his chair, his ribs ached. His vision swam. The war was going exactly to plan. The Marine didn't just leave the arena. He walked away from their entire concept of power. Behind him, the aliens scattered like leaves in a storm. No longer an empire, just a collection of nervous factions carrying his lesson home. Their ships lifted off with no fanfare, no threats, just the quiet urgency of creatures who'd seen something they couldn't unsee. His boots echoed on the shuttle ramp. Blood crusted his knuckles. 3 ribs ground together with each breath. None of it mattered. The real damage wasn't physical. It lived in the way alien commanders avoided his gaze when he passed. How their tactical displays kept replaying the moment their king's knee buckled. Those images would spread further than any bullet. Humanity's greatest weapon was never muscle or bone. It was the ability to make enemies question their own strength. The Marine's smirk returned as the airlock sealed. Not triumph. The quiet satisfaction of a chess player watching his opponent realize they've been playing the wrong game all along. Combat psychologists confirm that shock outlasts wounds. The aliens would heal their king, rebuild their arena. None of it would erase the footage now burning through their networks. One human, no weapons, no armor. Just relentless patience turned suddenly lethal. Back on the observation deck, silent arguments raged. Vassal species murmured in corners. Royal guards shuffled their feet instead of standing at attention. The Marine's ship computer pinged with 17 new diplomatic overtures before he'd even cleared the atmosphere. He deleted them all. True power isn't taken. It's demonstrated, then walked away from. The Marine knew the coming weeks would bring revolts on mining colonies, defections from border fleets, whispered doubts in council chambers. Seeds planted today would bear fruit light years away. Military historians recognize this turning point. When victory isn't about ground taken, but perceptions shattered. The Marine hadn't just beaten their champions, he'd exposed their entire hierarchy as theater. His hands moved over the ship's controls, setting course for the outer transit lanes. The autodoc beeped a warning about internal bleeding. He muted it. Rebellion started in the mind first. The footage already spreading showed more than a fight. It revealed their unstoppable warrior king reduced to a broken figure crawling after his crown. No voiceover needed. No propaganda banners. Just one undeniable truth: they could fall. The aliens would tell themselves lies at first. That the Marine was some augmented prototype. That Earth had cheated somehow. Their scientists would comb the footage for signs of hidden tech. Find nothing. The knowledge would eat at them. Human warfare has always favored the underdog. Not because we're stronger, but because we fight smarter. The Marine adjusted his chair, feeling fresh blood seep through his makeshift bandages. Pain was just data. His screen showed 17 separate insurrections flaring across the border systems. None of this was accidental. Every cut he'd taken, every blow absorbed, had been a calculated investment. The Monarch's shattered kneecap would ripple through their culture like a stone through glass. Somewhere in the Royal Medical Bay, their king screamed at healers to fix him. The Marine knew no brace would ever let him stand tall again. Not really. The damage wasn't just to cartilage and bone. It was to the idea that some beings were untouchable. His ship slipped into warp. Starlines stretched outside the viewports. Behind him, across 100 worlds, the great unwinding had already begun. Mercenaries were breaking contracts. Tax collectors found doors barred. The little lies that glue empires together were coming unstuck one by one. The Marine exhaled slowly. His ribs ached. His vision swam slightly at the edges. The autodoc beeped again, insistently this time. He finally reached over and slapped it silent with a blood-stained palm. Psychological victories outweigh physical ones every time. He didn't need to occupy their throne worlds. Didn't need to burn their fleets. Just make them doubt. Once that seed took root, their own people would do the rest. Status reports flickered on his console. 2 vassal systems had already declared independence. 3 more were in open revolt. The Marine didn't smile. Didn't need to. His work here was done. Behind him, the Empire was already fighting its own shadows. Ahead lay the dark between stars and whatever came next. The Marine leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes just for a moment. Not sleeping, just waiting. The galaxy had learned its lesson. That was victory enough, for now. The Marine ship disappeared into the warp lane's blue shimmer, leaving no debris, no grand exit. Just an empty vector where he'd been. In Galactic Standard Time, it took 17 minutes for the repercussions to start. On Zenthis Prime, a mercenary guild tore up contracts with the Crown Fleet. Their reasons cited changing strategic realities, a diplomatic euphemism that meant they'd seen the footage. The images traveled faster than any official transmission, their monarch crawling after his crown, his knee bent all wrong, while that bloodied human loomed over him without even bothering to finish the job. 3 border systems went dark that first hour. Not to invasion, just silence. Governors stopped transmitting tribute reports. Garrison commanders invented malfunction excuses for patrol cancellations. No one declared independence. No one needed to. The chain of command had snapped somewhere between the Marine's first smirk and his final words before leaving. Human strategists call this the demonstration effect. Show one undeniable truth. Let witnesses draw their own conclusions. Shockwave analysis later confirmed 17 separate insurrections brewing before the Marines' shuttle reached the asteroid. Belt to Earth's Defense Council received the initial reports with minimal reaction. Brief glances exchanged across the table. Tight nods. They'd seen the live feeds, of course. Every calculated move, every restrained counterstrike. The Marine had performed exactly to spec. No more. No less. A combat psychologist tracked the ripple effects. Vassal species who'd spent generations under heel now eyed their overseers differently. Not with outright rebellion, not yet, but with the quiet recalculation of shopkeepers sensing a regime change. Some alien commanders doubled security. Others quietly recalled occupation forces from human border worlds. The military term is asymmetric deterrence. The Marine hadn't demonstrated superior firepower or numbers. He'd exposed something far more dangerous, that humanity fought by different rules, that their patience wasn't weakness, that their restraint was voluntary. 9 light-years coreward, a Royal Armada abruptly changed course. No explanation given. Satellite imagery showed crews arguing on deck. Orders went unsigned. The footage had reached them. 2. Those few crucial minutes where one unarmed man dismantled their entire warrior caste's reputation without raising his voice. Strategic forecasting models updated in real time. Probability cones that once predicted inevitable human subjugation now showed 68% likelihood of Imperial fragmentation within 6 standard months. Not from direct attack, but from the slow rot of shattered prestige. The Marine's autodoc beeped in the shuttle's dim cabin. 3 broken ribs detected. Internal bleeding at 19% capacity. He muted the alert. Wounds healed. Paradigm shifts didn't. Back in the royal court, ministers scrambled to control the narrative. Official statements called it an isolated incident. A misunderstanding. Their propaganda teams worked triple shifts to edit the arena footage, blurring the Marines' most damaging lines. It didn't matter. Seed transmissions had already reached the outer colonies, intact. Political scientists later identified this as the broken mirror moment, when populations see their ruler's weakness reflected in others' eyes. The Marine had cracked that mirror deliberately. Now every species in the Empire saw their own reflection differently. Humanity's ambassadors remained conspicuously quiet. No gloating transmissions. No triumphant press releases. Just polite silence and suddenly available trade negotiations. The message was clearer than any broadcast. We didn't start this, but we'll finish it. Rebellions aren't televised. They happen in whispers and withheld labor, in garrison troops losing supply manifests and tack ships developing sudden engine troubles. The Marines' shuttle passed Jupiter's storm belts as the first confirmed mutiny hit a royal battle group. Not a shot fired. Just crews refusing orders to deploy against human settlements. Deep space monitoring stations caught the surge in encrypted traffic. Hundreds of vassal worlds suddenly talking to each other without royal oversight. Old grievances resurfaced. Ancient alliances stirred. None of it directed by Earth. All of it made inevitable by one demonstration. The Marine finally powered down his console. The tactical displays winked out, leaving only the black of the void beyond the viewport. His reflection floated against the stars, face bruised but calm, eyes alert despite the pain suppressant's fog. He knew the math. Knew how this ended. Their empire would fracture along seams that had always existed. Some systems would beg for human protection. Others would lash out in dying spasms of imperial pride. None of it changed the core equation. The balance of power wasn't shifting. It had already shifted. The moment their king's knee hit the stones, the galaxy realigned itself. Across 17 light-years, a dozen species historians later agreed on one point: the war never really started. It just stopped being deniable after that day in the arena. The autodoc beeped again. Persistent little machine. The Marine finally acknowledged it with a grunt. Time to seal the cuts, set the bones, prepare for whatever came next. Outside the shuttle, the stars burned cold and steady. Behind him in the dark, an empire unraveled one thread at a time, exactly as planned. The console lit up with new coordinates. Not Earth, not any military base. A neutral zone rendezvous. More messages to deliver. More lessons to teach. The Marine inhaled, tasting blood at the back of his throat. He entered the coordinates without comment. The ship's drive spooled up with a familiar whine. Somewhere behind him in the dark, revolutions were being born. The Marine's smirk contained more firepower than any battleship. Every drop of blood he left on those arena stones was a calculated investment, proof that humanity plays a longer game. The galaxy learned two truths that day. First, our greatest weapon is turning humiliation into advantage. Second, their king's knee shattered just like any joint would. Power isn't about who hits hardest. It's about who keeps thinking after the first blow lands. The Marine walked away without finishing the job because wars aren't won by killing kings. They're won when subjects stop believing in crowns, remember that. Always.